I was fairly lenient on all answers that I could read. I was less lenient on those answers that I could not read. If the word legibly is anywhere on your page, you must. If I can't read it, it's wrong. Even if it's right, it's wrong. And if I'm going to continue to get illegible, let me put it this way: how would you like it if it took you 20 minutes to grade one of those, trying to figure out what it says? That's not fair. That's not fair to your teacher, who is a teacher, a guidance counselor, and the head of a girls' basketball coach. That's not fair. So you're going to either write legibly, or I'm going to give it back to you and tell you to do it again legibly, or I'm just going to give you 0. So you need to write legibly, and there are a number of you that's the case for. So let's answer these questions. And most of the answers here say answers will vary, which is why I was lenient on those ones that I could read, because some of them we can't know for sure. So the Pharisees obviously disagreed with Jesus' teaching, but people don't usually try to arrest those they disagree with. If you are one of the Pharisees, why would you have wanted to go after him? In other words, why would you have wanted him to be arrested?
He's threatening their position.
Okay, he's what? He's
threatening their position.
Yes, he's threatening the leader's position, their leadership, threatening their populace that is supposed to listen to them. They're listening to Jesus instead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, I thought you were talking about chapter 20, so I did chapter 19. I just didn't. I was supposed to.
Okay, well, leave it today and I'll grade it. No problem. Yeah.
He was also making them look bad, like calling out all the things that they were doing wrong, making them look really bad in front of them.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is, do you think that people already knew? It's like, dudes, everybody knows that you're crooked. That's, this isn't some big news flash. I'm just calling you out on it. They're afraid to. So yeah, absolutely. What were you going to say, Jacob?
I was going to say kind of their, what Jesus is saying kind of takes away from their power. If he's God and their rules are wrong, then they don't have the right to do most of what they're doing. If they can't do that, they're upset because they lose their power.
Right. And I can't remember which chapter it was, but everyone's going after him. Right. So they're paying more attention to Jesus. Some people are paying more attention to Jesus than to the Jewish leadership. All really good answers. Next question. When Jesus said he would go somewhere, the Jews thought that Jesus was going to leave them to teach Gentiles. That's what the Greeks means, just non-Jews, who had begun to follow Judaism. I don't know about that last part, but the Gentiles for sure. Why didn't they understand what Jesus was saying? Yes.
They didn't know who said, like they didn't believe that he came from God. They didn't understand that he was from God.
Right. They didn't get that. They must have thought some other guy, crazy guy, maybe John the Baptist sent him. Who knows? But yeah, they had no clue what he was talking about. Yes.
Like they understood that he was from Nazareth. That's not like an awesome place. They were like, oh, well, he's from that trashy place. He's going to be the person to teach them.
Well, that's a good thought. I have never thought of that because of his upbringing and because of where he was raised, he couldn't be an important teacher. So Jews aren't going to listen to him. Yeah. I think one of the reasons, though, is that Jews had really almost nothing to do with Gentiles. So I think if they're saying, well, we can't go, well, we wouldn't go to the Gentiles. We wouldn't go live among the Gentiles. We wouldn't teach the Gentiles. What good is it to teach the Gentiles? They're not part of God's chosen people. And so he must be going to the Gentiles. That's my best guess on that, but I don't think there's a right answer. And it all is predicated on, it all revolves around the fact that they don't believe who he is. They don't believe that he is who he says he is. They believe he's an imposter. And so they're not going to take anything he said, as being true or from God. Imagine that you were a Jew in Jesus' day. What might have made you want to side with the Pharisees against Jesus?
I think she was.
Oh, you were raising your hand? This was a hand raise? Oh, okay, go.
No, then I read.
Okay.
Well, the Pharisees were like what they knew. Option versus guy.
At a path of least resistance. Yeah, I think that's one of the kindest things. Yes. Yes.
Like Jesus wasn't just calling the Pharisees out, he also called out the people who, I think people who are in sin don't like to be told that.
Sometimes vociferously. Yes.
Like the Pharisees had like power to like kill Jesus when they were wanting to kill him. So it was like
There might be a cost for me as well. And they probably saw the disciples, there was a cost for them in following Jesus. Yes, Jared.
The Pharisees' law was their tradition. They've always done
It's just what we do. And that happens a lot of times when people grow up in some sort of religion or tradition. It's just all they know. Why would I do anything else? Why would I go to anyone other than that? And their leaders were opposed to it. And think of your pastor. If you have a pastor that you really respect, and he said, "Hey, don't listen to this guy's podcast," you might go, so they were opposed to Jesus. So those are our leaders. Must be bad. What does it seem to you that the Jewish people wanted Jesus to be? And most of you gave the same answer, Ellie. Yeah, they wanted Rome out. And so they were looking for a political or a military Messiah, someone who would overthrow the Romans. And when the people find out that's not the Messiah he is, then a lot of them are like, I'm not up for this. I'm not up for it. And you need to understand that to be crucified was shameful. Like that's even not a strong enough. And so you're going to follow some guy that's going to get crucified. It was an ignominious. That's a big word. Ignominious kind of death. It was a shameful kind of death. It was for the worst of the worst. Let's see. Would you have wanted what they wanted? Why or why not?
Probably yeah, because like you're under oppression from the Romans for so long, and like you just want to be free.
Yeah, you'd want that. Laura.
I agree with Aaron. If, like, you didn't understand that what he was offering was greater, you would definitely want to forward your save you from all the pressure.
I just like explain it.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. And they didn't know. They didn't understand. Misunderstanding, right? All over the place. What do you think the officers meant by their response to the chief priests and Pharisees in verse 46? So someone read verse 46 for us, please. John 7:46.
officers answered, "No one ever spoke like this man."
Yeah. I know that's it.
That's what I thought.
What do they mean by no one has ever spoken like this man? Yeah.
I think it goes back to the authority thing. Pharisees spoke on authority of we have bunches of them, we do a lot of school. Jesus spoke on God's authority.
Yeah. When he spoke, it was qualitatively different from everybody else. Like he, well, I'll tell you a joke that a speaker you'll hear in senior year. He went to Catholic schools as a child, and he said, I had this one nun for a teacher that talked about hell like she was born and raised there. Jesus is talking like he was born and raised in heaven, right? Like he is from heaven. And what do you do with that? Like if Mr. Hood walked in here and started talking about God as his father, not like the way we do. Like, no, he's my actual father, and I'm going back to heaven, and I'm, I mean, we can all be like, Mr. Schrog, right? And so yeah, he's completely different than any other teacher they've ever heard. Yes, Laura.
He was also talking about things, like he knew things that no one else did and spoke in a way that a lot of people couldn't understand him.
Yeah, he confounded a lot of people, but amazed them as well. So we've never seen anyone like him, I think is another way of like, we've had a lot of teachers, we've heard a lot of people speak. There's nobody like this guy. He's different. And so I think that's, I think this could he be Messiah? Because Messiah is going to be different from everybody else in a really good way. And so could this be Messiah? What, somebody going to say something? I thought it was. Gentleman in the back, you need to pay attention. Was that a valid excuse for their disobedience? And I want to hear from you people that said no, because I want to understand why you said no. Most of you said no.
Part of like this slash no is like it's not an excuse for their disobedience. Like they said no because like it's God and stuff, and like even if there's a verse in the Bible that's like you should know God by by the people around you and stuff, and it's like there's God, and I understand there's like culture along with it and stuff, but like God, and like he did these things and he claimed things and he like freaking rose from the dead, and they're just like, no, I don't think so, but like hindsight is 2020, like we said, that they didn't understand, and of course now it's a whole lot easier for us to understand because we can see it.
Oh, the way I read the question was like the officers, like when the Pharisees asked or like told them to like arrest Jesus, and the officers were like, "No, we did it because of this." Like, yeah, like you're kind of giving them like a reason why, but it's not really like a valid reason. Like, you couldn't like arrest him because there's like people in the crowd, or like it wasn't safe to, or something like that. But they're just like, no, because he's talked different. Like, I think it was them having like a mental battle. Like, they could have arrested him, but to save themselves, they were just like, oh, they didn't give him like an actual reason.
I said no because I believe a lot of them didn't want to do this and had the ability that they wanted to. They could probably find out more about him. But I think a lot of them, when they realized it was going to be hard, they kind of gave up. I don't think that's a valid excuse for not trying to learn about him just because you don't understand what he's saying.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I think
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you didn't
Come back soon. We are gonna.
I think there were valid reasons. I don't think that the reason that they stated was a valid reason. I think that was. I mean, can you imagine if parents told you to do something and you said, I can't think of an example. my parents told me to go get my sister. No, because she talked different. I
Yeah.
don't see how that would be a valid.
Yeah, but it isn't just that she talked different. It was that he talked different. It's that he was doing things and teaching things that were completely different from anything they've ever experienced. Because obviously he was the Son of God. Let me put it this way: if your youth pastor began to teach heresy, would you think it was a good idea for your parents to say, "Look, you're not going to that"? Okay. So think of their leaders that were leading them astray. So I would say, if we found Messiah, then we need
Yeah, but that's misunderstood.
Wait, disobedience to the priest or to God?
I read
Yeah,
it. I read it
yeah.
as to God.
I read it as
Okay,
God.
Yeah,
that makes more
same.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, then that makes more sense. That's what I needed to hear. Yeah. So it's not a question I'm going to ask, but I read it as their disobedience because they were told to arrest him and they didn't arrest him. That was the disobedience because they were told to arrest him and they didn't arrest him.
I'm still saying no, even if it was to the Pharisees. Because yes, it's disobedient, but like what Aaron said, I don't think it's a valid excuse. Like, someone talks different.
It isn't that he talks different; it's that his teeth are different.
That's what I mean.
It was like their inner.
I don't mean like he talks like with a British accent. I mean like what he's saying is different.
Jesus is the British.
I think
Yes.
Doesn't it matter what they thought of how he's like teaching? I guess because thinking about it, with the officers wise, it would be they thought he was just another teacher who was teaching. Then no, not really, because if it was just another teacher,
Like
in
they're
that
not just arrested.
yeah, like in that case, if he's just another teacher, then yeah, I guess. But since the authority does come from God, and if they saw that, oh, he gets his stuff from somewhere else, this is that type of thing, then yeah, it's about
I mean, I don't know, like, for me, like, if I'm, let's say I'm, like, in Omaha or something, and I'm walking down the street, and there's somebody just, like, spewing nonsense on the side of the road. Like, I don't just go, like, hey, come arrest this guy. Like, you know, I just be like, he's kind of interesting. Like, you know, just let him say what he's going to say. No
Yeah,
one
but
cares.
the cops might go arrest him. Like those in authority might say arrest him. No, you on the street, you have no power to tell anyone anything to him. But in this case, these are the Jewish leaders. They have the power to arrest whoever they want. Yes.
I think the better response that they could have used would have been in that case, he was doing different things, but he was doing things that was against the law. He had said things that they considered against the law.
Well, and healing on the Sabbath, but he wasn't breaking the law.
Right.
They didn't understand that. Well, anyway, it's all a matter of opinion. I just wanted to understand where you came from, and that it makes sense to me now. So Scripture doesn't tell us if Nicodemus. This was also I got some interesting answers. Scripture doesn't tell us if Nicodemus ever believed in Jesus. If he was a believer, do you think I take a little bit of issue with that? But if he was a believer, do you think that he was bold enough before the Pharisees? Why or why not?
I definitely wrote that question.
Do you think he should have done more?
Yeah.
Who else was doing more?
Not really.
Not
No one's
really.
doing anything.
They're following around, but they weren't being adversarial with the Jewish
John the
leadership.
Baptist.
That's
John the Baptist, maybe, lost his head for it, but yeah.
Well, if that's not
he did
adversarial.
more than anyone else at the time even considered doing, which is a lot. And if you put yourself into those shoes, I think most people in this class probably wouldn't make it. At that time, stood up against a bunch of powerful people.
Yeah. Any of you have a story, have a faith story that is gradual? Like it happened in stages? Anybody have a story like that? Like it wasn't like boom. Yeah. So Nicodemus goes to Jesus at night. Jesus blows his mind. He walks away in silence, kind of shaking his head. Now we see Nicodemus again. And when the Jewish leadership that he is a part of is saying, we've got to arrest this guy, we've got to get rid of this guy. And Nicodemus, and answers them and is siding, not really strongly, but he is siding with Jesus, or at least siding with not arresting him, right? And then we're going to see later on in John that it was Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus that went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body and gave him a proper burial. Now he is completely aligned with Jesus. I have no doubt that I will meet Nicodemus in heaven. That he became a believer. And I don't see anyone doing more, even his own disciples, speaking back to the Sanhedrin. So I think it wasn't the most full-throated endorsement he could give. No, but it's more than anyone else was willing to do. Yes.
I was gonna say like they believe in was told after Jesus' death and resurrection. Because then, after his death, but then after the resurrection, I think he understood even more what Jesus meant by being reborn in his life.
Yeah.
I think at the time, he knew he could do, I just said, the actual faith, he just didn't know what, to do all enough.
Yeah.
His faith just wasn't there yet. But it eventually got there.
And the question I ask myself about that whole thing is, would I have done more? Would I have done more? I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah.
So also you could possibly consider the Sanhedrin, they were all powerful, but among them he might have been a less powerful member and that not have been able to speak out as much as he probably would have been able to if he were.
Well, Jesus calls him the teacher of Israel. We don't know where he stood in sort of the hierarchy. He certainly wasn't high priest.
Right.
Yes.
So say Nicodemus did have full faith at the time, and he's sitting there thinking, okay, what do I do in this position? So if I was in that position, if I had the calmness and the wisdom to do so, I think what he did was very wise because Nicodemus was still the teacher. People still respected his authority.
Right.
Why throw that authority away? He still stood up for Jesus. Maybe not, like everyone said, as full-throated or as much as he could have. But he still did stand up for Jesus. But at the same time, he didn't throw away his entire credentials, I guess, with Jewish leadership. Because if he had full faith and he still had his position, he could influence so many more people out of his high position than just throwing it away.
Yeah, one more thing, and because we got one more question.
If he did that and then kept his stuff, he would have been more able to help Jesus out of the later point, possibly during the trial if they were to do that.
I don't think he thought that far ahead though.
Also, if he upset the Pharisees with how he responded. He had to have a calm response, otherwise the Pharisees would have removed him and not even considered him. But with the calm response, they were more likely to listen to him.
I think that's very possible. So what would you have done in his place? Probably nothing. Probably nothing.
I think I misunderstood the question, but I said I would have like deep dived into like the older prophecies in the Old Testament, like studied them hardcore and been like, hey, where does it line up? And if it doesn't, then we know he's lying.
Yeah, if
But
you're
like,
gonna
let's
ask,
compare it.
yeah, if you're gonna ask, could this be the Messiah? Let's go check
You
out what it
better
says
start
about
researching.
Messiah. And he certainly is claiming to be Messiah. Okay, good job with that. Thank you very much. Don't have time to study for your test, but I will give you some time to do that. Yes.
So did it happen with chapter 20? Because I thought that was
Thanks for the
Okay, better show me.